The voice of the drum calls. It sings a song of those who came before us and those to come. A song of survival and strength. A song of participation and voice. A song that calls us together. When we come together and participate in the 2010 census, we use this tool as the voice of all our Native people. Our voice. It is in our hands. 2010 census.
Hello, I'm Kimberly Acosta. Welcome to this edition of the Native News Update. It's Monday, March 22nd. Many of the stories you hear here can be found at our website, IndianCountryNews.com. And here's the news for the day from the Associated Press and other Native news sources. Months before a teenager fatality shot 10 people in Red Lake Reservation in 2005, the local band finished building a taxpayer-funded detention center for troubled youth. 5 years later, the $2 million facility remains unopened and empty, except for thousands of dollars in furniture bought by the U.S. government. The U.S. Bureau of Indian Affairs was supposed to request the more than $1 million per year needed to run the center, but never did. Leaders of the Red Lake Band of Chippewa, the Minnesota's poorest and most isolated band, say they lack the resources to operate the center themselves. They've since hired a law firm and are preparing to take the federal government to trial next month. The U.S. Department of Justice is seeking the help of students to identify American Indians who might be victims of radiation exposure. Congress passed the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act in 1990, authorizing funding for people who worked in the uranium mining industry or nuclear weapons testing between 1942 and 1971 and contacted cancer or other diseases from radon exposure. Most applicants are filed by people living in the Four Corners region, but American Indian tradition and customs can make successful claims difficult. Students can hear more about the part-time internships at Northern Arizona University on March 29th, the University of New Mexico in Gallup on March 30th, and at Dine College in Shiprock, New Mexico on March 31st. A new federal rule might mean thousands of human remains and ancient artifacts will be handed over to Native American tribes. That might even include the famous 9,000-year-old skeleton known as Kennewick Man, who was found on the banks of the Columbia River. Scientists, museums, and tribes are still working with their lawyers to decipher just what the new rule by the Department of Interior might mean. Scientists studying ancient artifacts and remains oppose the plan, but it's winning praise from tribes. Bambi Kraus is the president of the National Association of Tribal Historic Preservation Officers, and she says under the current rules, tribes have to prove an affiliation with the remains to get possession of them. The new rule will eliminate that requirement. She says Native American tribes have a huge task ahead of them, and that's sorting out the remains. The proposed rule is scheduled to take effect May 14th. Scientists who are studying Kennewick Man say the rule shouldn't apply to the skeleton. Federal courts have already ruled that the bones are not Native American. 3 poets and over 15 visual artists will explore the complex and often violent relationship between Native Americans and the Federal Bureau of Information in an art show called Freedom of Information, the FBI, Indian Country, and Surveillance. Their work will examine the volatile times of the 1960s and 70s when the FBI's COINTELPRO program sought to crush Indian activism up to the present where technology allows intrusion into our personal lives to a previously unimaginable degree. An opening reception will take place April 30th at Ahalina Studios located in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Cheyenne and Muskogee activist, policymaker, and author Susan Schoen Harjo will read her poetry at the opening reception. This art show will explore the personal experiences of artists who have been incarcerated, threatened, attacked, or spied upon by the FBI, but also artists who have worked with the FBI as prosecutors and who have been helped by the FBI in investigations. Artists explore the effect of their experiences on their personal lives. A group of Native Americans have arrived at the church at Christ Church, New Zealand on a spiritual journey which they hope will ultimately result in salmon being reestablished back home. The salmon in their own rivers are dying out, but they are thriving in New Zealand after being introduced around 100 years ago. 28 members of the Winnemem Wintu tribe plan to perform a ceremonial dance by the Rakai River to lure the fish back to California. The Chinook and Quinault salmon are native to the Pacific but are in short supply in Northern California, mostly due to mostly due to the damming of the Sacramento River. Turner Classic Movies this May will present the 5th installment in its Race in Hollywood Festival, this time turning its attention to Native Americans. Every Tuesday and Thursday night during May, TMC will schedule selections from Native American images on film, beginning with a trio directed by John Ford. The films and introductions will explore a different topic each night, starting on May 4th at 8 p.m., with an evolution of characterizations that will showcase Ford's notables, Stagecoach, The Searchers, and Cheyenne Autumn. Other topics, according to TMC officials, will include Indians as enemies, white men living among Indians, Indians as noble savages, Native Americans facing racism, Native American actors and filmmakers, and images from outside Hollywood. And that's the latest roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. I'd like to thank you for joining me, and have a grand day.